So, you've watched the first two parts of this miniseries. You know how to attack, and you know how to defend. Both involve split-second decision making, sometimes risky, and often requiring full concentration as well as precision and skill. They say practice makes perfect, but nobody is truly perfect. We all make mistakes from time to time and get things wrong. This certainly applies to close racing, and we all accept that it's just part of the game. Accidents happen, but why then do racers get so damn wound up and angry all the time? Sometimes it's simply the frustration of getting taken out, but often it's because these accidents weren't really accidents, they were incidents. Incidents that could have been avoided with better racing etiquette. In this third part of our Ultimate Guide to Racecraft, I want to talk about exactly that. A controversial and divisive topic that I appreciate is highly subjective, but one that, with a little bit of compromise here and there, most racers can generally agree on. No matter what the rules and regulations of any given series are, it's always important to race with respect and treat others how you want to be treated out on circuit. I'm not saying you can't make a bold move, a late lunge, or apply some slightly cruel tactics now and again, but everything needs to be done with a degree of mutual understanding and calculated judgment. I appreciate not all of you are going to agree with everything I say in this video, and I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. I'm coming at this from my own personal perspective, with a decade of sim racing and real racing experience. So with that in mind, let's jump in. You often hear the phrase, rubbing is racing.
And rubbing, son, is racing.
And well, no it isn't. Sure, there are occasions where a little bit of subtle contact, side to side, bodywork to bodywork, or wheel to wheel might be considered tolerable, especially in high-level touring car racing. But generally speaking, motorsport is a non-contact sport, and this phrase is thrown about as an excuse. A battle between two or more cars should be able to take place without a collision, and relies on all parties to display a little bit of mutual respect. It's often a case of treating others how you would like to be treated yourself, like I said earlier. Of course, contact does happen, often accidental, sometimes deliberate, and sometimes there are no consequences. But more often than not, this will end in disaster. Every different series and discipline has a different set of rules, an unspoken expectation of what is acceptable. You're more likely to see a little bit of door banging in a short touring car race or rallycross event, with riskier moves and slightly more aggressive actions taken. Endurance racing, on the other hand, requires a higher level of care, and contact will be severely frowned upon. The same thing will likely apply to single-seater racing, where any contact could result in a major incident, whilst in superspeedway racing, a little bit of intentional pushing and nudging at the right moment is accepted and encouraged as part of the sport. Doing this at Talladega is fine. Macau, not so much. Know and understand the nature of the racing in your chosen discipline, and ensure that you read any rulebooks or guidance that you're provided with. Many private leagues will have a strict zero contact policy, while others might encourage a little bit more self-regulation. The main thing is that as a driver, you know exactly what is expected of you. One common theory is that in a racing situation, you should always do your best to leave what's called racing room.
All the time you have to leave a space.
This essentially just means that if someone is alongside you, you should always leave them at least a car's width of space between your car and the edge of the track. Essentially, don't force them off the track by moving into them. When racing side by side on a straight, it's a similar story. You can use the track at your disposal, but always make sure you leave a car's width. If both of you try to force each other to one side at the same time, it will probably end in disaster, so be careful and predictable with any attempts to move across. Standing your ground and holding your line is perfectly okay too, so long as you've left a car's width if anyone is indeed alongside. Whether it's a straight or a corner, the grey area here comes when there is a small overlap rather than two cars equally side by side. A general rule is that a car with its nose in front has priority, and it's the car behind who is responsible for avoiding contact if overtaking. However, that doesn't mean as the leading car that you can just shut the door completely. You still have to leave them enough room on the side where they have the overlap, and then it's their job to keep control of their car and make a safe move. Only when you are fully ahead of someone can you even consider cutting them off entirely. On the subject of cutting people off, we talked a lot in the previous episode about the art of defending, even discussing some slightly rude tactics along the way. To reiterate what was said then, as a defender you still have an obligation to race respectfully, even though it's often more the attacker's responsibility to make a clean move. More on that specific element later. If you are defending from another driver on a straight, you should focus on being proactive rather than reactive. For example, if the car behind has more momentum and makes a late move to the inside line, you can't simply block them or force them to lift by cutting off their nose. You should have anticipated this sooner, moving to block the inside line before they made their move. It is okay to move on the straight, but it's always within reason. Weaving to break a slipstream is fine if the specific series allows you to, and you are far enough ahead, but weaving to block isn't. This is the cause of a lot of big airborne single-seater crashes due to the speed difference and lack of reaction time for the car behind you. Quite simply, if you want to block a particular part of the road, do it before the following car reaches you. Oh, and if you've ever seen a Formula 1 race, you will know that changing direction suddenly in a braking zone is not wise either. It's a similar situation. The car behind needs enough time to react to any defensive move you want to make if you want to avoid causing a collision. The other phrase often thrown around when discussing defensive etiquette is, "they turned in on me." This is always a talking point. When is it okay to turn in on someone, and when is it not? Sadly, the answer is largely subjective and will depend entirely on that particular situation. Let me give you some context. Yes, if the attacker goes for a crazy dive down the inside from a long way back and is never going to make the corner, if you turn in and there's a crash, the attacker probably will be blamed. However, the result is two unhappy racers, both with broken cars. Nobody wins. If the car that makes the move isn't going to make the corner anyway, trust your instincts and let them make the mistake. Run wide, and then you can retake the position on the exit. If they do it and still manage to hold their inside line at the apex, then it's just a legitimate overtake that you didn't defend early enough. Simple. As a defender, the grey area comes when the attacker manages to stick a nose down the inside but doesn't get all the way alongside or even ahead. That's when you need to use a little bit of common sense. Yes, the attacker will likely be blamed if there is a collision, but that also depends on the circumstance of the overtake and the overlap they have. There is no black and white here, more of what I like to describe as a sliding scale of responsibility. The general rule of thumb is that it's the attacker's responsibility to overtake cleanly. However, this only applies when the defender has acted appropriately. If you make a legitimate move under braking, into a slow corner for example, and have managed to successfully get the majority of your car alongside your competitor, and crucially, you're still on course to safely make the corner in full control of your car, then the defender has the responsibility to leave you appropriate racing room and avoid a collision. However, each of these individual factors that I've just listed off will have an effect on the scale of responsibility. How late is your move? How far back were you? How much of your car is alongside your rival? How fast or dangerous or wide is the corner? Are you going to make the corner? And are you in full control of your car whilst making the move? You get the drift. Fast corners that aren't normally overtaking spots require extra care. Yes, it might be possible to overtake, but only if you are confident your rival has seen you in the mirror and you are able to safely execute the overtake whilst remaining fully in control. Basically, this won't happen often unless your rival makes a mistake beforehand, but if it does, it could be epic. Speaking of epic overtakes, what about a move around the outside? We all love these because they're harder to pull off and just generally look pretty damn magical. A similar sliding scale of responsibility applies here. If you have the momentum and a decent overlap, the defender really should leave you a car's width at all times. A bit like how you wouldn't slam a door on someone if their arm is already through the frame. But if you only have a tiny overlap, aren't carrying the momentum, and the natural racing line leads the defender to the outside on the exit, expect them to slowly close the door. You missed the bus, wait for the next one, and don't let the bus driver close the door on your fingers. This analogy's gone too far. Of course, there is a point in the middle of this scale of responsibility where an incident is 50-50. Neither party actively caused the problem, but neither party compromised to avoid it. This is often described as a racing incident. It happens, and it's unfortunate, but that's just the nature of the beast. In racing, someone has to compromise themselves for it to work a lot of the time. That's why they say 3 into 1 doesn't go. Yes, it might be no individual's fault if you collide, but that doesn't change the result. At the end of the day, nobody wants to crash. Nobody wins, so you have to know when it's right to back out or leave room. If you choose not to, do so at your own risk. To summarise, as an attacker, you shouldn't go for half-ass moves. Only go for it when you're confident you're going to be able to get a reasonable amount of your car alongside the defender and you're able to make the corner in full control. If you're looking to send it from a long way back, a dive bomb, again, be confident that you can get it stopped or at least avoid contact before the apex, and through the faster corners, think very carefully before trying it. Maybe it's better to focus on your exit instead. If you want to avoid upsetting your competitors and the organisers, there are a couple of other things worth noting. Being careful around yellow flags is one of those. Sure, in sim racing, nobody's in real danger, but if you cause an incident whilst trying to take advantage of a dangerous situation on track rather than lifting, you won't be popular. Then you have things like the formation lap. If your chosen sim has contact enabled on the warm-up lap, be thoughtful when you warm your tyres and brakes. Weaving and braking is fine, but do it safely. Oh, and finally, don't bump and run. Front to rear contact to move somebody out wide through a corner isn't friendly, not allowed, and even in touring car racing will likely end in a punishment. No matter what you do to prepare, I can guarantee you it will go wrong at times. I'd like to think I'm a fairly safe driver, often not aggressive enough in fact, but I've still found myself wiping out innocent drivers numerous times over the years. Hard racing is never easy. My first piece of advice, give the place back to your rival if it's a clear mistake you have made. This especially applies in more casual league racing, where there often isn't stewarding or a safety rating to punish you. Own up to your mistakes if you know you've made them, and if you can, apologise to the innocent party and explain what happened from your perspective. This will go a long way, especially in a tight-knit sim racing community. If you are the victim and get wiped out or spin off, your adrenaline's probably going to be running fairly high. Just be careful when you rejoin and try your best to remain calm. I can't express this enough. Don't retaliate, just report the incident if possible. It's amazing how much adrenaline sim racing produces, and always have a look at the replays when possible before accusing others. Often in the heat of the moment, you haven't actually seen the full story. Maybe you didn't leave as much room as you thought you had. Maybe you thought there was contact but there wasn't, or you were pushed but you weren't. And maybe the car that hit you was hit themselves in the first place, sending them into your car. Communication is the key element here, and this also applies if you're feeling unsure about racecraft in general. If you're struggling to understand what is hard and fair racing and what is beyond the limit, speak to someone with experience, whether that's an organiser, a steward, or even a fellow racer. If people are angry at you for your on-track antics and you don't really know why, don't assume they're wrong straight away. Talk to them, watch the replays, and analyse things together. Even if it's a bit awkward at first, open discussions will go a long way to clearing the air and establishing what could have been done differently by either party. Even if, after all was said and done, the fault clearly lies with your rival, remember that mistakes happen. If there was no intention, forgive them for it, and they will be far more likely to race you well in the future, or be understanding if things are the other way around next time. This is especially the case when this is the first incident between you and this particular driver, and even more so if they have apologised for it. You often get to know the people you race with, so a bit of mutual respect and understanding will create far more incredible sim racing experiences in the future. The more you battle and learn each other's traits and driving styles, the better and safer the racing can become. That rounds off our chat about racing etiquette, and as I said at the beginning, remember that this is a subjective topic. You may not agree with everything I've said, and that's fine, but hopefully you've picked up some useful information along the way. Please do leave us a like and let us know in the comments below if you enjoyed the video. It really does help the channel grow, allowing us to bring you more content in the future. Oh, and get subscribed if you aren't already, so you don't miss the next part of the series. That's it from me today, so until next time, thanks for watching, keep it pinned, and have a great day.